Welcome back to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance, management, metrics, and effectiveness, because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Most businesses track their reviews. Fewer actually learn from them. A 4.7 rating feels like success, though that number rarely explains what customers experienced or why one location performs better than another. The real insight lives inside the words customers leave behind. In this episode, we talked to CEO and co-founder of RightResponse, George Swetlitz. George shares how review data can reveal operational problems, guide better decisions, and turn review responses into one of the most valuable marketing touchpoints at the bottom of the funnel. If you've ever wondered how to better navigate customer reviews, learn how to respond to them, not react, this conversation will give you plenty to think about. So, let's go. George Swetlitz, welcome to What Gets Measured. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. So, RightResponse AI, this is your current company, but you had a previous job where it says here you scaled to 220 locations. And I'm just thinking, that's amazing. To keep one business going is a lot. To keep 220 locations going, I just want to, speak to you as you're coming from this operations mindset. What's the pain right there? I mean, the data measurement at that scale, what made you think like there might be a better way to handle this, or is the scale too much? Just talk about that. How did you go from zero to huge?
Yeah. So, growing, this was an audiology business. So think hearing aids. And we were, scaling that business through a combination of organic growth, opening locations around established businesses that we have, but then also acquiring businesses and very strong businesses and bringing them into our footprint. And as we did that, as you can imagine, there's lots of issues around scaling these kinds of businesses. And part of those issues were around reputation and the impact that reputation has on your ability to generate organic growth. And so, for example, a common problem would be that we would have two locations in what seemed to be, for us, similar demographic environments.
That's right.
But one would perform very well and the other one wouldn't. And so why? Why would that be? And so as we did more research, we found that in some cases, that might have to do with the competitive environment. In other cases, that might have something to do with the reputation of that business. And so then we started thinking about, well, how do we measure that? How do we understand it? How do we collect data? And it was very difficult to do that. So there are platforms out there that are reputation management platforms, but very infrequently can you get data out. Many applications are, closed gardens or walled gardens. You can do a lot within it, but you can't take data out. And so we had a hard time getting the granularity of the data. That we were very analytics heavy as a company.
And George, is this like Yelp? Are you talking about those type of platforms? Or
yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
Google, Yelp,
Okay.
any kind of review management source
Right.
for
Yeah, you go.
location-based businesses.
Okay.
Exactly. And so, we had data engineers in our company. We had a lot of sophistication around that, but we had a difficult time getting the data. So fast forward a couple of years, it was private equity backed, so we ended up selling the company. And then ChatGPT came out. And so we thought that AI could help in a lot of the elements of that, kind of the problems that we had.
So I mean, when you aligned on reputation management, was that the big takeaway from the former audiology company? We were like, man, reputation was a big ding. It seems like most people don't start a company based on this if they didn't think that was the main issue. Here, wait, one question: reputation versus workforce management.
Was it reputation that helped you, or was it better management? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you just had better managers in that store, the reputation would be better. Is that a
Yeah,
thought?
but that is like you have to manage all of it. Sometimes, right?
That's all your responsibility, right?
You have to manage everything. And so, making sure, but how do you know that you have a problem? How do you know?
Well, that's
And
my
so,
question. This next
right.
one is like you're looking at disaggregations, 5 stars, 1 star, whatever. You can't go through looking every review. You can't track the sentiment shift. And so speak more about this AI pivot that could help you kind of look at aggregate data and make sense of it.
So you're exactly right. What most platforms give you is a view of your ratings. 4.5, your average is 4.7. But it's when you start to peel the onion, it's much more complicated than that. You could have 2 restaurant locations, both have a 4.7, but one could be good at food and bad at service, and the other could be good at service and bad at food. They both average to 4.7, but for very different reasons. So in order to understand what the problem is, what people are talking about, you have to do more. And so that's voice of customer, sentiment analysis, and now you're starting to generate lots of data. So you've got a review that's got a paragraph, but now you have, well, there's all of these things that people are talking about, and that sentiment's either positive or negative, and there are certain phrases that caused that to trigger. And so we didn't have any of that data back then. We didn't have it. You couldn't get it. The idea was, right? The idea was start something, build something where we create that data. We use and leverage that data. And that's essentially what the idea was behind RightResponse.
That's so cool. And so you're hitting on something that a couple previous guests have talked about is causation, correlation. These are not the same things. So, when you're wondering what caused something, that's a heavy, heavy question. Sentiment analysis, it's like correlation statistics. How do you tune the AI so it isn't making correlation mistakes and it's getting you close to causal relationships?
Most large organizations have a set of KPIs. They know how they think about the business. I've got products that I sell, and people tend to evaluate the products in this way. Or I offer these services, and people tend to think about that in a certain way. Or
like NPS is almost our internal review system,
Right. So think about NPS. I mean, that's a different NPS to me is almost, it's kind of interesting, but it's unusable. Right? Because it doesn't tell you anything.
It sure doesn't.
You get when it tells you, customers like me or they don't, and I can compare that to my competitors. But then I'm like, well, why? Like, why don't they like me?
It's crazy because a lot of people are dying off of that number. They're living and dying off of that. And whenever I'm asked to, 1 through 10, how'd we do? 7. I just want to get out of your form. Are they really giving you the tea? No, that's why I love, you have to go where these conversations are happening. You have to have the wherewithal to go in and listen for context. You have to know what's happening that might cause these things. So, how do you disaggregate sentiment data? What is it? What is the disaggregated sentiments give you those star ratings? Obviously, like you just said, they can, but kind of like, how does that change? How does now an operator who's looking, through your interface being like, this helps?
So that's exactly the question, because the reality is you have somebody that's a 4.5 average rating in their business. So what do? You just go yell at them. You say, no, it's 4.5 is not good enough. I want you to get to 4.7, right? Because I don't have any information to give you, right? I don't have any other information to give you. If you want to go figure it out, go read the reviews and figure it out for yourself. But just as the leader, I'm saying, go fix it. So that's what happens in most companies. What you need to do, you need to do is you need to analyze the information that customers are freely giving you. They're giving you this information. It's like a gift, right? I don't have to go do survey. I don't have to pay anybody. They're like freely giving me this information. And then I can go back and say, Mary, you have a 4.5. There's one thing you need to focus on. People aren't satisfied with the way you handle the waiting, the reception and waiting and the efficiency of that. That's what people complain about. So fix that. And here's our SOPs and here's whatever it is, but fix that and you will have a higher rating. Like that's what a real company does, right? That's what a company that leverages data will do.
It's just a very interesting thing because you said go fix it. That's like the modus operandi. Just go fix it. And I worked in hotels. I worked law firms. You want to talk about people who are getting ratings and reviews. But one of my jobs at the hotel was to respond to every review. And they were like, just write whatever, was what I was told. And I kind of took it. It was one of my early jobs as a marketer, and I took it seriously. I talked to them like they were people. I made sure that I stood up for, the rights of the hotel. Like if you got stuck in the bathtub, is that the bathtub's fault? How can I say that diplomatically? But after a while, the hotel was like, everyone loves the responses you're giving. Heretofore, they hadn't said anything to any of them. 1 star, 4 star, no response. But within a month, the hotel was like cheering me on because it was just a place where they didn't want to, like, people are kind of saying good things or bad things, but I just don't even want to go in there. And I just did a backlog and worked forward. And by the time I got done, all I did was show up as a human to a conversation. I made like friends with, some of the people that were complaining were like, I thank you so much. It was just like, and it blew my mind because I was like, this is marketing. I'm out here thinking advertising is marketing. Marketing is a billboard. Marketing is it's this. It's being seen, seeing people, showing up to relationships. And I love that you said they freely give it. But one thing that I had to stop these fools from constantly doing is arguing with the reviewers and respondents online. Like you have a lawyer talking about, client, attorney, confidential stuff in the thing, saying, no, this client doesn't. I was like, stop, don't do it. So what's your response to people who are like, no response to the reviews or respond to the reviews? Or how do you engage with, you have the review, you have the thing. How do you speak back to that person? How do you keep that, nice, freely given, wheelhouse going?
Yeah. So the first thing that companies need to recognize is that the review and the response is a marketing opportunity. It's a marketing opportunity. It's not a task that has to get done. It's not, it's none of that. It's a marketing opportunity. It's the ability to participate in a conversation. So the review space is a conversation between your customers and the rest of the world. That's what it is. And the question is, are you going to participate in that conversation or not? So how do you not participate in the conversation? You don't participate in the conversation if you don't respond. You're not participating in the conversation if you use a template response. Thank you. We appreciate your, whatever, right?
Right.
Standard response again and again and again. You're not participating in the conversation if you use a generic AI response. So that's the big thing right now, right? So someone says, I love the steaks, but I hated the fries. And the response says, oh, we're glad you love the steaks. We're disappointed that you didn't like the fries. It's a meaningless response.
Right.
Everybody knows it's a meaningless response. All you're doing is taking up space. And so I think that it's a net negative. Generic AI responses are a net negative. They work against you. They hurt you, right? We've done surveys with customers, kind of random things, where they tell us that. They know now what a generic AI response is, and they don't like it.
And audience, we are them. You know what it's like to get a canned response from somebody. Are you like, hooray? No.
And so our approach to that was to say, if it's a marketing opportunity and it's an opportunity to talk to all sorts of people that are in the process of making a decision, you don't go read reviews for fun. You read
No,
reviews because you're trying to make a decision. There's no one closer to the bottom of the sales funnel than someone reading a review. They're making a decision.
totally.
So if that's the case, then don't you want to take all that great content that you spent lots of money developing on your website and bring that content to your response, right? So if on the website you brag you're a restaurant and you know all your steak comes from this farm in Colorado where it's grass-fed beef, whatever it is, and you put that, you're proud of that, and you put that on your website. If someone writes a review that says, "Oh man, that was the best steak I've had in Tallahassee," then don't you want to say, "Yeah, we think it's great steak. We've been working with this farm in Colorado for 22 years, and we buy all of it. It's all organic grass." Don't you want to say that so that when someone's reading it, they go, "Man, I want to try that steak." That's what people don't. That's what they're missing, right? Is that you have, and so that's what our platform does. You kind of catalog all of these things. What you said before when you were writing them by hand, right?
I was
When
doing it
you
by
were writing
hand.
them by hand, right? If you could have said to a system, hey, if somebody makes a comment about, I wish we had, if somebody writes writes a review complaining about the fact that, they had to be in a pool with all sorts of toddlers. In the response, write that there's an adult pool by building C. Next time, visit the adult pool by building C. That's what you would have said. So wouldn't it be great if we could automatically do that so you don't have to think about it all the time?
Well, but it's nice to have somebody who has experience on the front line with folks giving you a way to make sense of the data. That's why I want to move into the data conversation because subject matter expertise is important. If you are getting all of these, multi-location brands, they have mountains of review data, sentiments, competitive benchmarks. At some point, somebody has to make a right response to all that data. So I'm kind of wondering how just in general, not in regards to right response, or maybe in the way that you've built your engine, how do you get people the data that they need in a way that they can use it and then into a place where they can act on it, transmit it, just the general approach to from data to trust.
Right. Well, as you know, kind of building a system yourself or having a system yourself, there's this kind of tension between simplicity. Everyone wants something that's simple and easy to use, and richness of data, and all of those things, right? There's this trade-off. And so in our platform, we we provide certain screens and dashboards that are different than most people. They're richer. So for example, we have something that's called the ratings grid. And so what we do is we look at what are the topics, both positive and negative, that people talk about in a 5-star review versus a 4-star review versus a 3-star review versus a 2. And so when you just visually look at it, you can see what starts to shift as the rating goes down. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about kind of the connection between rating and KPI. Okay. So
Context,
we do
context.
things like that, right? It's context, yeah. So we do things like that. But then for our larger clients, they want to take all the data. They maybe want to build a model. They want to do a lot of things. So we allow our larger clients take this granular data, which would be the topic, the strength of the sentiment, the exact phrase that triggered that topic, And you can imagine for every review, there might be 20 of those things. And now you have all these reviews. So it's a large amount of data that they can extract and use it how they want. The same thing is true of competitor data.
Mm.
So what people don't necessarily think about is that anything that you know about yourself, you can also know about your competitors, right? Why are
Yeah.
they successful, right? What are their problems? What does that mean in terms of how I position myself from a marketing perspective against my competitors? So we can look at you can come into our system and you can identify who your competitors are, and we can look at that. And then we can develop the sentiment analysis using your KPIs for your competitors, and we can compare them.
So
So
it's, I'm just thinking like the takeaway from all of this is if you have data, you have to do something with it. And I like what your whole game is to figure out how to respond, to something. And I think it's one of the big problems is I have the stuff, I'm not sure, not how to act, how to respond. And I think there's something about the way you're just approaching data in general is just like, what's the response that's required? It feels empowering.
yeah, and it's exactly what you just said. When we say response, we're not talking about the physical response to the review. We're
Right.
talking about how do you respond to the sentiment? What's the right response? How do you help your employees do a better job? How do you understand? How do you respond to the competitive environment that you're in? So it's all of these responses that drive your business forward. So when we say right response, it's this broader sense of like, how do you respond in general to the data that's available through this review ecosystem?
And this is maybe we can just end generally. I'm going to ask you one more, but reaction, responding. I think I've been, a little overwhelmed as, it happens. A lot of technical changes happening, ceaseless change. And then you kind of wonder, how can I balance those things? Do you have any advice, in regards just in general, like how reaction and response, do you think of them differently? Do you have any advice on people? Because it feels like you're making a really compelling case, but I think a lot of people are reacting mostly, and they would love to respond. Is there maybe something general you could give us in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, it's a management philosophy, right? So do you run your business reacting, or do you try to develop a hypothesis about what you need to do to be successful and then drive in that direction until data tells you that you're not right, or maybe you made a mistake, or maybe you need to steer in a different direction? And that's always been the approach that I've taken in organizations that I've been in. And the core of that is data. The core of that is generating as much data as you can in the areas that you think are important, and then developing a hypothesis and testing that as you go forward. So I would say that's how I would respond to that.
Great response. He didn't feel too reactive when he gave that one. He had it in his pocket. So you've given us a lot to think about. The importance of reviews. Just thinking about sentiment analysis for competitive research, that is kind of cool. You can go and do that. You can do it for yourself, know your audience, know your competitors, be stronger. If there's one piece of advice that you want to leave us with, what do you think it is, George?
I would say to companies, location-based businesses or businesses that get lots of reviews, to really think critically about how to leverage that review ecosystem to drive their business forward. I think it's a huge missed opportunity for many, many businesses.
Yeah. And it's not just a task to check off, people. Get with George and follow him. How can we connect and learn more about you online?
So RightResponseAI.com, that's our site. People can reach out to me there. We have the ability to schedule appointments and things like that. We love talking to people about their businesses. And I'm on LinkedIn, RightResponse, and George Swetlitz. We're on LinkedIn, so happy to connect with people there as well.
cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
Sure.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate, 100%.
Whoa. What time is it? It's probably chocolate o'clock where you are. It's okay. Treadmill or trail?
Trail. I'm not
Yeah.
much of a treadmill guy.
Ah.
I just get bored. If I'm on a trail, I can appreciate where I am and what I'm doing. Treadmill's just for me.
That's kind of what I was wondering. If somebody was like all treadmill, I would have been like, yeah, consistency. Trail's the right option. Anyway, box lunch or bag lunch?
I don't even know what the difference is.
I guess a
between a box
lunch. Well, just imagine then. Yeah, there's a lunch in a box and a lunch in a bag. Which one are you going to take?
Probably the bag. Well, no, actually, I would say if it's a reusable box, I would go with the box.
Good
How about that?
caveat. No, I love that. And that made sense. I was like, man, but there is no right answer in this game. Okay, here we go. Books. Are you one at a time or are you slowly going through a stack?
Stack.
Yeah, you
A
like
stack.
to touch
Yeah.
a bit.
There's just too many books. There's a lot of books. And you don't always make it through every one, so you got to have a lot of them going.
Well, and I've gotten to that point where you don't feel bad. Like if you've gotten 80 pages in and it's not grabbing, like I'm okay to move on. Life is too
Okay.
short. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. We're hitting it. Okay, two more. Flying or invisibility?
Flying. I'm a pilot, so I got to say flying.
Are you piloting? Where you got your license and everything?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I
go
love
ahead.
flying.
Fine. Well, as you were, sir. Okay. Ooh, this is the last one, and I know it's contentious, so I saved it for the end. Band of bagpipes or a sideshow of slide whistles?
I mean, I know what a bagpipe is, but I don't know what was that other thing?
You know the woo, whoop, you know.
Uh,
Would you
Probably
want a
bagpipes.
choir?
I like the way bagpipes sound.
It's the safer option, both a little jarring, but no wrong answers on today's show. You win the prize, George.